I was standing in the executive hallway at DeepTech Technologies when Raymond Carver blocked my path to the conference room. His hand pressed against the glass door, his smile wide and practiced. "Tiana, we've got this one covered. You always expect the worst anyway." He laughed like he'd made a brilliant joke. Behind him, I could see the other senior analysts filing in, pulling out their tablets, settling into the chairs I'd helped arrange. My risk assessment report, the one I'd spent 4 weeks building, sat in a folder under my arm, suddenly worthless. I stepped back. Not stumbling, not protesting. Just a clean, deliberate step backward. "Sure, Raymond. Let me know if you need anything." His eyebrows lifted slightly, perhaps expecting more resistance, but he just nodded and disappeared into the meeting room. The door clicked shut. Through the frosted glass, I watched shadows move, voices rising and falling in muffled debate. 3 days later, he came running. "My name is Tiana Malcolm. I'm 31 years old." And that moment in the hallway changed absolutely everything. But before I tell you how it all unraveled, let me ask you something. Have you ever seen a disaster coming from miles away, warned everyone who would listen, and then watched them walk straight into it anyway? Have you felt that specific flavor of frustration when people treat your expertise like paranoia? Drop a comment if you've been there. I read every single one, and honestly, your stories helped me realize I wasn't losing my mind during the worst of this. Let me rewind 8 months. I'd been working at DeepTech Technologies for almost 5 years, steadily climbing from junior analyst to senior risk strategist. The company built cybersecurity infrastructure for financial institutions, banks, investment firms, insurance companies. High stakes, high pressure, high reward. I was good at my job. Better than good. I could see patterns in data that other people missed, could model cascade failures 3 steps ahead, could translate technical risk into language that executives actually understood. My personal life had recently imploded. A divorce that drained my savings and left me sleeping on my cousin Delilah's couch for 6 months while I rebuilt. My ex-husband had been charming right until the end, when he'd cleaned out our joint accounts and blamed my obsessive work habits for why he'd found someone else. The paperwork finalized in January. By March, I was finally stable again, renting a small apartment in the city, focusing everything on my career. DeepTech was my anchor. I poured myself into every project, every assessment, every presentation. When they assigned me to evaluate the Cordova financial integration, a massive merger that would connect our systems to one of the largest investment banks on the East Coast, I treated it like my masterpiece. I spent weeks inside their infrastructure. Interviewed their IT teams, reviewed their security protocols, tested their backup systems. What I found made my stomach drop. Their legacy systems were riddled with vulnerabilities. Single points of failure everywhere. Outdated encryption. Network segmentation that existed only on paper. Worse, their internal culture discouraged bad news. Every risk I flagged, their managers explained away. I documented everything. Built models showing exactly how an attack could propagate. Calculated financial exposure. Drafted recommendations for delaying integration until critical gaps were addressed. The report ran to 47 pages with another 30 pages of technical appendices. Then Raymond Carver got involved. Raymond was VP of Strategic Partnerships, relatively new to DeepTech, hired away from a competitor with promises of stock options and a corner office. Mid-40s, expensive suits, a voice that carried authority even when he was saying nothing of substance. He'd made his reputation closing deals, not evaluating them. The Cordova integration was his baby, his ticket to the C-suite. When I first presented my findings to him, his expression went carefully neutral. He listened, nodded, asked a few questions. Then he said, "This is good work, Tiana. Really thorough. But I think you might be seeing shadows here. Cordova's been in business for 30 years. They know what they're doing." I explained again. Showed him the cascade models, the exposure calculations. He smiled that same practiced smile. "You're very detail-oriented. That's valuable. But we need to think bigger picture here. This deal is worth $40 million over 3 years. We can't kill it over theoretical vulnerabilities." Theoretical. That word hung between us like smoke. Over the next 2 weeks, Raymond systematically excluded me from key meetings. First casually, "Oh, we moved that call, didn't I mention it?" Then more deliberately. Other analysts started looking at me strangely in the hallways. Someone from HR asked if I was managing my stress levels appropriately. Raymond told our director that I'd been struggling with personal issues and might need some support to maintain perspective. I knew what was happening. I'd seen this pattern before, in my marriage, in other workplaces. When someone wants to discredit you, they don't argue with your facts. They reframe you as emotional, unstable, unable to see clearly. They make your expertise sound like anxiety. But I'm not the person I was a year ago. Divorce taught me something valuable. I don't need anyone's permission to trust my own judgment. So I kept my head down. Kept documenting. Kept my copy of the original report in 3 separate locations. And when Raymond blocked me from that final risk discussion, the one that would greenlight the integration, I stepped back and let him have his meeting. 72 hours later, everything fell apart. I was in my apartment when my phone started buzzing. Text after text. Delilah first, are you seeing this? Then colleagues, former classmates, even my dentist somehow, is this your company? I opened the news. Cyber attack hits Cordova Financial, systems compromised. My hands went cold. Breach originates from partner integration, sources say. I read the article 3 times. A coordinated attack had exploited exactly the vulnerabilities I'd identified. Attackers had moved laterally through Cordova's network, then jumped to DeepTech's systems through the newly integrated connection points. Client data compromised. Trading systems offline. Estimated damages in the tens of millions and climbing. The article quoted anonymous DeepTech employees saying the integration had been rushed through despite internal concerns. My phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer. Ms. Malcolm? This is Octavia Sterling. The name meant nothing to me. The voice was crisp, precise, female, with an accent I couldn't quite place. I'm sorry, who? I'm the CEO of Argentum Security Consulting. We've been retained to assess the damage at DeepTech and provide remediation strategies. Your name has come up several times. I'm told you predicted this exact scenario. My heart hammered. I wrote a report. Nobody wanted to hear it. I've read your report, Ms. Malcolm. All 47 pages. It's remarkably accurate. Which is why I'm calling. I need someone who actually understands what happened here, and I need them now. Are you available for a conversation? I looked around my tiny apartment. Second-hand furniture, plants I kept forgetting to water, half-unpacked boxes still stacked against one wall. When? I'm outside your building. Black sedan. I can give you 15 minutes to decide. I should have been scared. Should have asked more questions. Instead, I felt something click into place. Give me 10. I changed into professional clothes, grabbed my laptop and backup drives, and went downstairs. The sedan was exactly where she said. Sleek, tinted windows, idling at the curb. The back door opened as I approached. Octavia Sterling looked like she'd walked out of a financial magazine spread. Late 30s, dark hair pulled back severely, wearing a charcoal suit that probably cost more than my monthly rent. She extended one hand. Thank you for coming down. Shall we talk somewhere more comfortable? The car pulled away from the curb before I fully processed what was happening. She poured me sparkling water from a built-in console. Let me be direct, Ms. Malcolm. DeepTech is facing catastrophic liability. Their insurance won't cover half of what this will cost. The board is in emergency session. Raymond Carver is being positioned as the scapegoat, but he's already hired lawyers and is preparing to argue that risk assessment failures happened at multiple levels. He cut me out of the process. I know. I have emails proving it. Which is why you're valuable. She leaned forward slightly. I need someone who can walk into those board meetings, into depositions, into client presentations, and explain exactly what went wrong and how it could have been prevented. Someone who can't be dismissed as partisan. You were silenced. You documented everything. You're the credible voice here. What's in it for you? She smiled, sharp and approving. I like that you ask. My firm was hired to clean this up, but my real client is Cordova Financial. They want blood. They want DeepTech's leadership held accountable. More specifically, they want Raymond Carver gone and they want someone competent running risk assessment for the combined entity going forward. If I can deliver that, I secure a 5-year consulting contract worth 8 figures. And you think I can help you do that? I think you're the only person who can. But I need you credible, composed, and unassailable. Right now, you're sleeping on Delilah's couch. I have my own place now. A studio apartment with furniture from college. No offense, but if you walk into a boardroom looking like you're barely holding it together, Raymond's lawyers will eat you alive. They'll say you were fired for incompetence, that you're bitter, that your personal problems affected your judgment. They'll make you look like exactly what Raymond already tried to paint you as. My jaw tightened. So what are you suggesting? I'm suggesting we make you untouchable. Move you into one of my corporate apartments. Get you a stylist, a media coach, a lawyer of your own. You'll work directly with my team to build the definitive case file. In exchange, when this settles, I'll recommend you for the chief risk officer position at the merged company. Salary in the high 6 figures, full benefits, and most importantly, the institutional power to make sure this never happens again. I stared at her. You can't promise me a C-suite position. No. But I can create the conditions where you're the only logical choice. Cordova wants someone who predicted this disaster. The board needs someone who can testify credibly in the inevitable lawsuits. The insurance companies want someone competent leading risk assessment. You check every box. She paused. But only if you're presented correctly. Presented. Packaged. Positioned. Protected. This is corporate warfare, Ms. Malcolm. You have the ammunition. I'm offering you the strategy. The car had been circling the block. Now it pulled back to my building. Think about it tonight. If you're interested, meet me tomorrow morning at this address. She handed me a card with an embossed address in the financial district. 9 a.m. We'll discuss terms properly. I took the card. Got out of the car. Stood on the sidewalk watching the taillights disappear. Back in my apartment, I pulled up everything I could find on Octavia Sterling. She was legitimate, ruthlessly successful, controversial, known for aggressive tactics in corporate disputes. Her firm had handled 3 major security breaches in the past 2 years, and in each case, she'd managed to shift liability in directions that surprised industry observers. Delilah called around midnight. Please tell me you're not doing something reckless. I don't know what I'm doing yet. That's what worries me. This woman shows up out of nowhere, offers you the world. She's offering me a chance to make them listen, D. That's all I want. No, you want revenge. Which I get, truly. Raymond's a snake. But these corporate games. I've been playing nice my whole career. Where did it get me? Silence on the line. Then, just be careful. And call me tomorrow after you meet her. Promise. Promise. I didn't sleep much. Kept running scenarios, questioning motives, trying to find the trap. By morning, I still hadn't found it. Maybe that meant it didn't exist. Maybe it meant I was exactly desperate enough not to care. I showed up at 9 a.m. sharp. The building was all glass and steel, the lobby dominated by a massive abstract sculpture. Octavia's assistant met me at reception, led me to a private conference room on the 20th floor. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the harbor. Octavia was already there, along with 2 other people. She made introductions: Carlton Hayes, an attorney specializing in corporate liability, Simone Yao, a crisis communications consultant. Before we begin, Octavia said, let's establish ground rules. Everything discussed here is confidential. If you decide not to proceed, nothing leaves this room. If you do proceed, we'll formalize our arrangement with contracts reviewed by independent counsel. Clear? I nodded. Carlton opened a folder. Ms. Malcolm, we've reviewed your employment records, your original risk assessment, and the email trail surrounding your exclusion from key meetings. You have an airtight case for wrongful termination if DeepTech tries to fire you, and a strong case for defamation if they continue spreading rumors about your mental state. I haven't been fired. Not yet. But Raymond's lawyers are working on it. We've seen the draft memos. They're planning to claim you were insubordinate, that you refused to collaborate, that you created a hostile work environment by fearmongering. They'll move within the week. My stomach twisted. How do you know this? We have sources inside DeepTech's legal department. People who are quietly horrified by how this was handled. Simone leaned forward. The media narrative is already forming. Right now, you're invisible in it. That's actually good. It means we can control how you're introduced. But we need to move fast. In 3 days, there's a congressional hearing on cybersecurity in financial services. Cordova's CEO will testify. We can get you a seat as an expert witness if you're ready. 3 days? Which is why we need your answer now, Octavia said. This is the offer: you work exclusively with my team for the next 90 days. We provide housing, coaching, legal protection, and a stipend of $10,000 a month. You help us build the case against Raymond and DeepTech's negligent leadership. At the end of 90 days, if we've successfully repositioned you as the credible expert voice, I leverage my relationships to get you interviewed for the CRO position. No guarantees on the final outcome, but I'll create every possible advantage. And if I say no? Then you go back to your apartment, wait for DeepTech to fire you, and spend the next 2 years fighting legal battles with your savings. Raymond walks away with a settlement and a new job at a competitor. Nothing changes. Carlton slid a contract across the table. This outlines everything in detail. Take it to your own lawyer if you want. But if you're in, we need to start today. I picked up the contract. It was dense, full of legal language, but the terms matched what Octavia had described. I read it twice. If I do this, I said slowly, I need one condition added. When this is over, regardless of whether I get the CRO position, I want a recommendation letter from you vouching for my expertise. Something I can use anywhere. Octavia's expression didn't change, but something flickered in her eyes. Approval, maybe. Done. Carlton, add that clause. He made a note. I signed. The next 72 hours were a controlled hurricane. Octavia's team moved me into a furnished apartment in a building 3 blocks from her office. 2 bedrooms, modern kitchen, a view of the river. Simone brought a stylist who rebuilt my professional wardrobe, structured blazers, tailored pants, dresses that communicated authority without trying too hard. A media coach taught me how to speak in sound bites, how to maintain composure under hostile questioning, how to redirect attacks without getting defensive. Carlton and his associates worked with me to refine my original report, stripping out technical jargon, adding executive summaries, building visual presentations that made the cascade failure obvious even to non-technical audiences. We practiced mock depositions, mock interviews, mock congressional testimony. It was exhausting and exhilarating in equal measure. On the 3rd day, I testified before the Congressional Subcommittee on Financial Cybersecurity. The hearing room was smaller than it looked on television, but more intense. Cameras everywhere, reporters packed into the gallery, representatives arranged in a semicircle asking questions that ranged from genuinely curious to nakedly political. I sat at the witness table between Cordova's CEO and a cybersecurity researcher from a university think tank. When my turn came, I walked through exactly what I'd found, what I'd recommended, and what had been ignored. Representative Monica Valdez, chair of the subcommittee, leaned forward. Ms. Malcolm, you're saying you identified these specific vulnerabilities weeks before the attack? Yes, ma'am. I documented them in a comprehensive risk assessment report. And what happened when you presented this report to DeepTech leadership? I was excluded from further discussions. The vice president of strategic partnerships told me I was being too pessimistic. Too pessimistic. She repeated it slowly, letting it hang. And then, 3 days after you were excluded, the exact attack you predicted occurred. Yes, ma'am. The room buzzed. Cameras clicked. That night, I was on 3 cable news shows via satellite. Clips of my testimony went viral. By morning, I had job offers from 4 different companies and interview requests from a dozen media outlets. Raymond Carver issued a statement through his lawyers claiming I was mischaracterizing events. It didn't matter. The narrative had already shifted. Back at the apartment, Octavia poured champagne. That was perfect. You were calm, factual, unimpeachable. Exactly what we needed. It felt surreal. Get used to it. Tomorrow, you have 3 depositions scheduled. Next week, you're meeting with Cordova's board. This is just the beginning. She was right. The next month blurred into a relentless schedule of meetings, depositions, strategy sessions. I learned the architecture of corporate warfare, how liability flowed, how narratives were constructed, how power shifted through careful accumulation of documented facts and strategic media placement. DeepTech tried to fire me. Carlton filed an injunction. They settled by placing me on paid administrative leave pending internal review, which effectively meant they couldn't touch me without triggering more lawsuits. Raymond hired a crisis PR firm. They tried painting me as a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. It didn't work. Too many people inside DeepTech were quietly leaking documents supporting my version of events. Cordova Financial sued DeepTech for gross negligence. The case would take years to resolve, but the preliminary findings were damning. My report was entered as evidence, presented as proof that DeepTech had clear knowledge of the risks and chose to ignore them. 6 weeks after the breach, DeepTech's CEO resigned. The board announced a comprehensive restructuring of the risk management division. 2 weeks after that, I got the call. Ms. Malcolm, this is Frederick Castellano. I'm the interim CEO at DeepTech. I'd like to discuss a leadership opportunity with you. I sat down carefully. What kind of opportunity? We're creating a new Chief Risk Officer position reporting directly to the CEO and the board. Given your expertise and your, demonstrated commitment to thorough risk assessment, we'd like you to interview for the role. Interview. A formality, really. The board has already reviewed your qualifications extensively. But we need to follow proper procedures. Would you be available next Tuesday? I looked across the apartment at Octavia, who was reviewing documents on her tablet. She glanced up, caught my expression, and smiled slightly. Tuesday works, I said. The interview was professional theater. 3 board members, Frederick, and the head of HR asking questions we all knew the answers to. They wanted to confirm I could play the role, poised, competent, willing to work within corporate structures while maintaining independence. I could. They offered me the position at the end of the meeting. Chief Risk Officer, salary of $420,000 plus stock options, full authority over risk assessment and veto power on strategic partnerships. We need someone who will tell us the truth even when it's uncomfortable, Frederick said. I think we've learned that lesson rather expensively. I negotiated for 2 additional staff positions and final approval authority on all technical integration projects. They agreed. I called Delilah from the car. I got it. She screamed so loud I had to hold the phone away from my ear. Oh my God. Tiana. I'm so proud of you. It doesn't feel real yet. It will. You earned this. You knew you were right, and you didn't back down, and now they have to live with it. That night, Octavia took me to dinner at an absurdly expensive restaurant I'd never have chosen for myself. Private room, tasting menu, wine that cost more than my first car. You did well, she said, raising her glass. Better than I expected, honestly. You expected me to fail? I expected you to be competent. You turned out to be exceptional. There's a difference. She paused. I have another project starting in 6 months. International corporate espionage case. I could use someone with your analytical skills. I just accepted a C-suite position. I know. But if you ever get bored of corporate life, remember that consulting pays better and offers more interesting problems. She smiled. Just a thought. I clinked my glass against hers. I'll keep it in mind. My first day as Chief Risk Officer was 3 weeks later. I walked into DeepTech's headquarters wearing one of Simone's carefully chosen suits, carrying a leather portfolio that Octavia's team had given me as a congratulations gift. The security guard who'd seen me hundreds of times did a double take. Ms. Malcolm? Congratulations on the promotion. Thank you, Daniel. My new office was on the executive floor, corner position, windows on 2 sides. Someone had already moved in my things, my books, my plants, even the framed photo of Delilah and me from last summer. My nameplate on the door read, Tiana Malcolm, Chief Risk Officer. I stood there looking at it for a long moment. Frederick appeared in the doorway. Settling in? Getting there. Good. Because we have a situation in the Tokyo office that needs your assessment. Can you join me in the conference room in 20 minutes? Absolutely. He left. I set down my portfolio, walked to the window, looked out over the city. Somewhere out there, Raymond was probably interviewing for new positions, spinning his version of events, trying to rebuild. I didn't care. He'd made his choices. Now he lived with the consequences. My phone buzzed. Text from Octavia: "Congratulations, Chief. You've earned your armor. Now use it wisely." I smiled and pocketed the phone. 20 minutes later, I walked into the conference room where Frederick and 3 other executives were waiting. They had a crisis. A potential security vulnerability in an Asian expansion project. They needed someone to assess the risk honestly. I opened my laptop and started asking questions. This time, they listened. 3 months into the role, I'd rebuilt the entire risk assessment framework. Hired 2 brilliant analysts who asked uncomfortable questions. Established direct reporting lines to the board. Killed 3 deals that would have exposed us to unacceptable liability. The executives initially bristled at my veto authority, but after I walked them through exactly why each deal was dangerous, they started seeking my input earlier in the process. DeepTech's insurance rates started dropping. Client confidence improved. We won back 2 major accounts that had left after the breach. I moved into a better apartment. Started dating again, cautiously. Took Delilah on a vacation to celebrate her birthday. Bought myself a car that didn't require constant prayer to start. Small things. Normal things. Things that felt revolutionary after years of survival mode. One afternoon, I was in my office reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant knocked. "Ms. Malcolm? Someone from the litigation team is here. Says it's about the court of a settlement." The case had finally settled. DeepTech paid $47 million. Raymond Carver was personally liable for $3 million and banned from holding executive positions at any company doing business with financial institutions for 5 years. The litigation attorney handed me a document. "Cordova's legal team wanted you to have this. It's a letter from their CEO." I opened it. "Ms. Malcolm. Your professionalism and expertise throughout this crisis were exemplary. While I wish we'd met under better circumstances, I want you to know that your testimony and analysis were instrumental in helping us recover and preventing future incidents. If you ever consider a change, we'd be honored to have you at Cordova Financial. With sincere respect. William Northrop, CEO." I set the letter down carefully. "Everything all right?" the attorney asked. "Yes. Everything's fine. Thank you for bringing this." After he left, I pulled up my calendar. Next week, I was scheduled to present to the board on emerging threats in quantum computing security. The week after, I was keynoting a conference on risk management in financial technology. In a month, I'd be testifying as an expert witness in another company's negligence case, this time, as the credible voice explaining what proper risk assessment looked like. My phone buzzed. Text from Octavia: "Coffee next week? Have an interesting proposition for you." I smiled and typed back, still happy in corporate life, but always interested. "Thursday work?" "Perfect." I set down the phone and returned to my reports. Outside my window, the city hummed with its usual chaos, deals being made, risks being taken, people trying to climb or survive or simply get through another day. I'd been all of those people at different points. The survivor sleeping on a couch, the expert being ignored, the voice finally being heard. Now I was the person with the authority to make sure the next Tiana didn't get silenced. My office door opened. Frederick leaned in. "Got a minute? The board wants your take on the Singapore expansion before we proceed." I closed my laptop. "Absolutely. Let me grab my notes." Walking to the boardroom, I passed Raymond's old office. Someone from operations had moved in, the space completely transformed. No trace of him left. Good. In the boardroom, 12 executives waited. They'd learned to respect my assessments. When I said something was too risky, they listened. When I said we could proceed with modifications, they implemented my recommendations. It wasn't perfect. Corporate structures never are. But it was better. Functional. Fair. I opened my presentation, and they leaned forward. This time, they wanted to hear the worst-case scenarios. They understood that pessimism, properly applied, was just another word for preparedness. I told them exactly what could go wrong. They took notes. We built safeguards together. And when we were done, Frederick said something that would have sounded absurd a year ago. Thank you, Tiana. This is exactly why we need you here. I gathered my materials and walked back to my office, my heels clicking on marble floors, my nameplate gleaming on the door. 3 days later, he ran in yelling. Except this time, he was a junior analyst who'd missed a critical vulnerability in a vendor contract. And instead of yelling, "Why did this blow up exactly like you said?" he was asking, "Can you help me fix this before it becomes a disaster?" I could. I did. That's the difference between then and now. Before, I was the voice in the wilderness, warning about fires nobody wanted to see. Now, I'm the one holding the extinguisher, training others to spot smoke, building systems that don't let disasters happen in the first place. Raymond's out there somewhere, probably still closing deals, still ignoring warning signs, still believing that confidence can substitute for competence. Let him. I've got work to do. And this time, when I say something's going to blow up, people don't just listen. They act. 6 months after taking the CRO position, I received an invitation that made me pause. An industry conference on cybersecurity risk management. The keynote speaker slot. But what caught my attention was the note attached: "We'd be honored if you'd share your experience navigating institutional resistance to risk assessment." Institutional resistance. Polite code for what had happened with Raymond. I accepted. The conference was held in a convention center downtown, attended by hundreds of risk managers, security professionals, and corporate executives. I spent the morning in panels, listening to other experts discuss frameworks and methodologies. Professional, technical, safe. Then came my keynote. Standing backstage, I felt the old nervousness return. Not the panic from a year ago, but something different. The weight of knowing that people were listening now, that my words carried authority they hadn't before. Simone had coached me through the speech weeks ago, but standing there in the wings, I made a decision. I crumpled up my prepared remarks and walked out with just my core message. The auditorium went quiet. A year ago, I was excluded from a meeting because someone thought I was too pessimistic. 3 days later, that pessimism proved prophetic, and the company I worked for faced a $47 million disaster. I paused, letting that number land. But this isn't a story about vindication. It's a story about the infrastructure of silence that exists in corporate environments, and how we dismantle it. For the next 40 minutes, I walked them through not just what had happened, but why. The cultural dynamics that punished bad news. The ways expertise gets reframed as emotional instability. The structural barriers that prevent critical information from reaching decision makers. I talked about the cost of being right when no one wants to listen. And I talked about building systems where truth-telling becomes rewarded instead of punished. The standing ovation surprised me. So did the line of people waiting afterward: junior analysts who'd been dismissed, senior managers who'd seen similar patterns, executives who wanted to know how to create better cultures in their own organizations. One woman, probably in her mid-20s, approached with tears in her eyes. "I reported a security flaw last month. My manager told me I was being dramatic. I thought I was going crazy." "You're not crazy," I told her. "Document everything. And if they won't listen, find someone who will." She nodded, clutching my card like it was oxygen. That night, back in my apartment, I opened my laptop and started writing, not a report, but an argument. About accountability structures in risk management. About institutional denial and the cost of silencing the people who notice fractures before collapse. I sent it to a business journal editor I'd met at the conference. She published it 2 weeks later. It spread fast. Invitations followed. Advisory roles. Speaking engagements. A university asked me to guest lecture on organizational psychology and risk assessment. Delilah called after seeing my name in a major paper. "You know you're basically famous now, right?" "I'm really not." "Tiana, you're the case study. Own it." Fame wasn't the point. Space was. Making room so the next person wouldn't have to fight as hard to be heard. 3 weeks later, during a strategy meeting, my assistant interrupted. "Ms. Malcolm, there's someone here. Says it's urgent." Raymond Carver stood in the lobby, diminished. The suit didn't quite fit. The confidence was gone. "I wanted to apologize," he said. "I knew you were right. I buried it anyway. I let the silence sit. I'm starting over, he continued. And every time a client ignores warning signs, I tell them about you. About the cost of not listening. Something loosened. Not forgiveness. Recognition. Good, I said. Keep telling it. After he left, I returned to my meeting. People were waiting to hear my assessment. And I gave it to them, every uncomfortable word. Because that's what they paid me for now.